First time I heard the footsteps was around March 20th. I hadn't noticed that my next door neighbor was either in the process of moving or had moved. The only thing that I had noticed was the lights in the house were on all night and they did not change. This went on for many nights. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I was getting some air. I was sitting on my porch swing, and from a few feet behind me, I heard gravel crunching. And it didn't last long. It was only a couple of seconds. It startled me, but then I started thinking, don't get crazy. Could have been a cat rolling around in the gravel, and it only lasted a few seconds. I went back into the house and I just didn't think about it anymore. Over the next few days, I saw workers coming in and out of the house. I believe there was some gardeners there, and there was a guy working on the roof. I also saw some women in the yard. I didn't give it any thought that the house was empty. It was around March 25th. I noticed that there was garbage in the backyard, and I hadn't noticed that the day before. By this time, I was certain that my neighbor had moved, and since the lights did not change at night, it dawned on me there was nobody living in the house. This isn't the first time that house has been empty. It's a rented house, so people do come and go. What was different on March 25th, it was a fruit tree in the backyard, and it had been filled with grapefruits. I began noticing that the grapefruits were being picked, even though I hadn't seen anybody do it. And the garbage in the yard had started to build up enough that I did notice a difference. I knew my old neighbor had not left the yard in that condition, and if they had workers in the house, I couldn't imagine why the workers were leaving the yard in that condition. I also noticed in an area that is behind their garage, which is on the side of my house, what you would consider garbage, but it wasn't like it was plastic bags. They were more like the large recyclable bags that you would get to go shopping. And they were up against the house. So I just took notice of it, but didn't think much of it. I figured that on trash day somebody would come and just throw the garbage out. Had they not tossed the garbage, I had even told my kids that they should go over there and throw the garbage out, because if garbage was going to sit around, I didn't want it to attract rats. It was the night of April 2nd, going into the 3rd. Again, I was sitting on my porch, on my swing, which is only a couple of feet from my neighbor's yard. It was again around 3 o'clock in the morning when I heard footsteps. The footsteps were a lot sharper, a lot closer, and they went on a lot longer as somebody was approaching. And that was the first time I got really frightened, and I jumped up off the chair. But I didn't immediately run into the house. I sort of froze in place, and I heard what was like a soft whisper, but I couldn't make out any words that they were saying. Now you might think, oh, why didn't you just call the police? Well, Vegas is in lockdown. It's hard enough to get the police to come on a call when it's normal. Now with the coronavirus, I was very hesitant about calling. As soon as I unfroze my feet, I ran into the house. I locked my doors, and I thought at that time that it would be best to call the landlord, so I texted my old neighbor, Tanner, and he got back to me in the morning with the management company's phone number. I immediately called the company, and they were very nice and very understanding. Within 24 hours, there were 2 women in the backyard cleaning up the garbage and the fruit that had been picked and thrown. Then I noticed that they had put a lock on the gate, which I was very grateful for. So I thought maybe it would end there, but it didn't. Right after I had spoken to the management company was the first time that I mentioned to my family that I thought there were people in the yard at night. Nobody really took it that seriously, and I was beginning to think I could be crazy. I was getting really paranoid. I don't think they disbelieved me, but they were just like, oh, it's mom again. So I let it go. I didn't say anything. And about, I would say a week later, there were two gentlemen in the backyard, and it was during the day. I called out to them. One was on the phone and the other one looked like he was picking weeds. So I just figured to myself, oh, they were just gardeners. So the guy that was on the phone got off the phone and came over to the fence. I asked him how he got into the yard because it was supposed to be locked, and he said he cut the lock. Up until this point, everything that I was experiencing could have been explained away in normal terms. At night, I could have been hearing a raccoon scampering across the rocks, and that would explain the fruit that was being picked from the tree and just thrown. Even though I was growing more and more paranoid about sitting out there at night, and I kept feeling like I was being watched. That was one of the strongest sensations that I had, because it wasn't just that I was hearing things. I had this really gut-wrenching feeling that somebody was watching me, and considering I have no neighbors that could see me because the house behind me was empty and my next door neighbor's house is empty, I'm alone back there. You know, sometimes at night you can get that way, especially when you're alone. But on April 14th, it all changed. Now I was certain that there actually was a person in the yard. I had gotten a little bit closer to the fence when I was taking the video. I wanted to get a clearer shot of them and noticed that it was a female. It was a little bit difficult to see what she was doing. She was picking something up, and they were the bags that were against the house, the recycling bags, and I got a feeling that the two women that were at the house, one of them was this woman. And then I was thinking, well, maybe the landlord doesn't know that the person that they hired to clean the house is homeless, or maybe they did hire a homeless person, and this person was now moving into the backyard. I decided I wasn't going to call the police on her that night. I almost did, but I decided I wasn't going to. I would just call the housing people again the next day. I was out on the porch again. It was April 28th, 2020. It was earlier in the evening, probably between 10 and 11 o'clock at night, and my family was still up. I was sitting on the porch swing just looking up at the stars when I heard that familiar crunching sound. I startled for a second and turned around. The crunching was right behind me this time, and as I turned around, a light flashed into my eye, blinding me slightly for like a second. This time I let out a scream. I didn't freeze. I did notice there was a face behind the light. Immediately I started running towards the door, slamming it and locking it, and I ran up the stairs to get my daughter's boyfriend John, and this is what happened.
No, I understand, but no one's supposed to be in that house.
Apologize, okay? I did not mean to do that.
What do you mean you live right where?
My brother and his wife were arguing like crazy over the dumbest stuff in the world. So I come over here and I just fall asleep on this grass. God bless you.
There's a woman that does it too, isn't there?
Yeah, she's not around anymore though. What's your name? She's gone. I won't do it again. I don't want to scare you. I apologize.
He was sleeping right here, and there's another part of the yard. Can you check that door? Because I saw the woman entering it. Uh huh. Thank you. Was the lock on the gate? All right, the police here, Dad. I'll tell the housing people tomorrow. Good night. They're gone. About a half hour after the police left, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock on my door. It was the brother of a girl who was very good friends with my daughter when they were young. He wanted to know why the police were at our house. It was very strange. As for the guy that was in my yard, he was never found. Well, that was just found in the yard.